Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is Cameron Bell. This is your extra show for the week. And if you're feeling a little bit disillusioned, I think, to say, in terms of where Rangers are at with the current transfer dealings, well, I can bring you a ray of sunshine in the form of my guest, and that is the ever wonderful, always cheery Colin McMillan. Colin, thank you so much for coming on extra this week.
Oh, thanks, mate. You're always so much nicer to me when the kind of microphone's running rather than in real life. But I still appreciate it. It's nice. I like it. Thank you. How are you? You good?
I suppose I'm going to share in what I imagine is the listeners' frustration in could we sign some players? That would be just lovely. We will get into that in just a moment. Colin, I think we're recording this pretty late on Thursday afternoon. I said to you, let's try and do it a little bit later in the hope that we would have some confirmed transfers to talk about. However, that does not seem to be the case. I genuinely hope, listeners, but by the time you get a chance to be able to have a listen to Colin and I talking about this, that we have done that, but I'm keeping everything crossed at the moment. Colin, where are you at the moment in terms of obviously what's going on across the course of this week? The manager had said on Saturday that he expected work to be done. He expected it to be a busy week. It's not been as busy as would have liked, if I'm being honest, as we come into Thursday evening, and our transfer outgoings and incomings yet to be confirmed. So how are you feeling about it?
I'm kind of, when you're trying to organise like a game of five-a-sides and you're struggling so much, you start wondering if the guys that you do have, if any of their dads want to play or anything like that. That's kind of where I'm at with. It's suddenly becoming not just needing better players to come in, it's just needing people, bodies now at this point, and fresh people to come in and change things up. And God, we could talk all night for the reasons behind and try and blame it why, Cammy, but we're here 24 hours, just over 24 hours before this window shuts, and we've seemingly just have so much still to do. So frustrated, worried, concerned, all the emotions that aren't good, basically, all at once is where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. We will chat about the Celtic game, of course. It would be remiss of us not to do that for this weekend's Old Firm game. But obviously, the more pressing concern is as you rightly say, in terms of why we're not getting to the stage of confirming signings. Now, there's been a lot of rumours going around, Colin. Let's talk about those players leaving, first of all. The main one I think that we can talk about just now is Todd Cantwell. He has wanted away from Ibrox for quite some time. Looks likely that he'll be heading down south on what I would have said, certainly a number of months ago, a very, very disappointing fee. Right now, we're at the let's just take what we can get stage. We know that Rangers have been very vocal about this idea of we have to be able to get players out before we can bring players in. Todd Cantwell's wages coming off of our spend will certainly help, but again, another saga that just pretty much needs done and dusted. Apparently, he is close to agreeing terms with Blackburn. This is just one that needs to be dealt with. He hasn't been involved within the Rangers picture really whatsoever. He hasn't been training with ourselves, the B team. He hasn't been involved. He's made clear his emphasis that he wants to be able to try and find a new chapter. But my hope is in a few short hours we will see that confirmation coming through, and then at least that's another player coming out of the squad.
Yeah, disappointing one for me. If you'd told me this time last year we'd be sitting towards the end of a transfer window just hoping and praying that we managed to somehow get £500,000 for Todd Cantwell, I wouldn't have believed it. Disappointing. I don't like the way that it's kind of ended for him. He's a guy who was a first team regular, who he did contribute, maybe not as consistently as he should have done, but he was certainly a contributor, and it's just gone terribly wrong. And it's publicly went terribly wrong, and that means it just destroys any sort of transfer fee, and clubs know that they can offer a pittance and get him. I've got a mate that I work with who's a Norwich fan. He's loving this situation because it's all the stuff he told me would happen when we signed him has happened, basically. But yeah, he's a big earner. He's sat and not done a single thing yet this season, and we just can't have anybody at this point who downs tools, decides they want to leave, and sits there just collecting a wage and not contributing. We just cannot have that, especially when it's somebody on a wage as good as the one that Todd Cantwell is. So Todd Cantwell to Cammy probably isn't the footballer that he thinks he is. He's probably not the footballer that we all thought he was going to be. But he still is a footballer that I think could make a difference to this current Rangers squad. I'm quite sad that he's not going to. But yeah, at this point, he's got to go. And if it's £500,000 and it's Blackburn and it gets rid of those wages and we can suddenly move and bring someone else in that will play and not just sit at the side, it needs to happen right now.
Interesting, because I actually do think that there is a player in Todd Cantwell, and you rightly say that there is not a lack of confidence from him, but this isn't the first time that, relationships have soured. My hope is, and I mean this in all honesty, right, I understand how this saga will eventually end, but my hope is that eventually at some point he just wakes up a little bit and realises that he has to do a lot of work and he has to do the hard yards to be able to be, a club icon, a successful player who can contribute on a regular basis for the team that he plays for. And, again, as your friend was quite clearly giving you a little bit of forewarning, it feels just a little bit too much to me. Like, once he starts to feel like as if he's not loved in terms of where he's at, then he wants to be able to get the move. So hopefully that will be getting concluded. Scott Wright, another player to Birmingham City this time. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm quite nonchalant about Scott Wright. I have defended him at times on our Patreon site, where I do know that he can take a lot of flack from the fans. He's quite clearly a hard worker. There might be limitations in there in terms of what he can do that maybe lets him down a little bit. But I don't have any ill will towards Scott Wright, Colin. I just feel that, he's been there. There's been a little bit of an over-reliance on him at times where, he's played because there's probably been lack of other available fit players in his position. He's tried. It's not really worked out, I think, as best as he will, but he'll leave Rangers, obviously with a league winners medal, a few other trophies in there as well. He'll have, some fond European memories. My hope is that, he can make it down south. I hope he plays in a team that's going to compete, but maybe not within the pressure cooker of Glasgow. As I say, no harm, no foul. I think, not one of the highest earners at the club. Managers liked him. That's why under a few of them, he was certainly getting his opportunity. But it just felt like as if there was just that real defining limit in terms of what he was able to contribute. And I think that's why a lot of the fans just couldn't get next to him.
Yeah, like you, no ill feeling towards Scott Wright. I'm not standing here by a pitchfork driving him away or anything, but he's a guy who just wouldn't have anything like the number of appearances he's got currently with any generation of Rangers team, really, other than this one of the last 10 years or so. And he is limited. He'll come in, he'll do his very best, but his very best just isn't good enough for what we want. And like I said, don't blame him. He's lived his dream. Came here, won a league title, won some cups, played in front of 50,000 people. It's probably the pinnacle of his career, and he's had it, he's enjoyed it. I hope he goes on and he enjoys the rest of his career and does well in football. But Scott Wright, playing the number of games that he's played, and playing as often for us under successive managers, is kind of why we're at where we're at, I think. And
probably the last one, which I think is the most interesting one, and I'm really keen on getting your opinion on this, is obviously Janis Hagi. Now, Janis Hagi, there's been some conflicting messages, the most recent of which he put out himself on his own social media, talking about basically, he's enjoyed his time at Rangers. He quite clearly wants to continue to be a Rangers player. But it conflicts with a statement that he put out at the beginning of the summer, where, he wanted, certainly it sounded like, to be able to facilitate a move away from Glasgow. Now, with that transfer window beginning to close, he did have a solid offer from Rapid Bucharest. He decided not to take that. His agent has been flip-flopping as far as I'm concerned in terms of, clubs are definitely after him. Actually, he hasn't had a lot of clubs coming in for him, and we need to resolve the situation at Rangers. The sticking point, obviously, is that if he plays again, there is a contractual stipulation that we'd have a wage increase, which is very much what we are looking to try and avoid in terms of our current net spend. I can't see him moving now, Colin. I'd be stunned if Janis Hagi wasn't a Rangers player come the weekend. It's an odd one. I'm hoping that common sense will prevail and there can be a conversation that happens with, the club representatives, the player representatives, that maybe renegotiates part of that contractual stipulation. People will say, well, we might be able to absorb it, but it's £500,000 a year that the increase more or less totals out to. It's not a small chunk of change, and it's also difficult because, like I say, I think the manager has indicated to him that he would struggle to be able to find a place for him. He's obviously had injuries concerns. Again, another thing that we really just don't need any more of at this point in time. But yeah, it's been a weird situation because at one point I thought he was destined to go, and yet he's still here. What's your thoughts in terms of, can we bring Janis Hagi back into the fold? Is there enough of a commitment from him that if he does get another opportunity that he's going to put his heart and soul into it, because it's going to have to require that if that's what he wants to be able to do. He will not want to just languish on the bench. He's missed enough football because of injury. But like I say, it just feels like an odd situation because, he indicated previously he did want to go, now he wants to stay.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one for me, Janis Hagi. There's just multiple sort of different points to this one. This is a bit of a niche reference, Cammy, but I know you'll get it. I think one of his biggest problems is, the Fast Show and the overly competitive dad sketches. I think he's grew up with that sort of dad who puts him on this pedestal and has told
136 of the Queen's runs.
Yes, that's the one. And it's just told him that he's the absolute best. The fact that he's Romanian, who are not tripping over themselves for amazing footballers, means that his face gets put on Pepsi cans and stuff like that in Romania, and he has this sort of superhero status there that he's had since a very young age, which is a hell of a lot to do with his name, a hell of a lot to do with how he performed as a youth player and coming through, and hasn't properly materialised for him as a kind of senior adult professional. If you just go on face value, his latest Instagram post, then you've got a super committed player that loves Rangers and wants to be here, wants to contribute, wants to do everything, and you think, get him in the team right away. But you're right, it totally conflicts with earlier things that he said and earlier things that he's done. He's not done anything for us in years, and when he signed, I thought he was going to be a great signing for us. He contributed in 55, he was playing in a team that was at its peak, and he did well there. He got that really bad injury. He's never really came back from it. He's went out on loan to try and recover. Didn't do particularly well on loan either. He's came back. I don't think the manager particularly fancies him in the position that he plays in. I don't think he's probably dynamic or quick enough for the manager who wants him in there. And I just don't think it's going to work out for him. And it shows with the lack of interest in him, even though he's got that superstar status. He's probably got the best of agents. He's got his dad telling everybody how amazing he is, and yet here we are, the day before the window closes, and there's not even a sniff of interest. There was something, I think, during the week from a team in Romania that I think he turned down, which I don't blame him, and there's nobody else sniffing about Janis Hagi. Do we put him in the team? Do we play him? Does he give it his all? I think he probably does, because I think he knows that now the only way he's going to get a move and get the sort of move that he wants is to probably knuckle down here and play well for 3 or 4 months and get a move in January, or play well for a year and get a move next summer. And although that's good for us if we get that out of him and then move him on, it's not for the right reasons if a guy's just going to give it his all to get a move away. But I think that's where we're at. And given the money he's on, regardless of this contract situation, the money he's on initially, we can't have somebody like that sitting in the stands either on that much money, because they're just, I don't want to use this phrase really, but he's bed blocking somebody else coming in and using that money and actually contributing. So if he's here when the window shuts and he's still a player, we have to use him. But we're probably using him for a multitude of reasons. 1, to see what he can do. 2, to put him in the shop window. And 3, because he's an expensive asset that we can't afford to have sitting around. Neither of which is particularly brilliant, but seemingly yet again, that's where we're at. It's a lot of situations at the club just now, and a lot of, if you break it down, there's so many individual aspects and individual things going on that are just far, far, far from ideal. in terms of his just new addition to the contract, if he makes the 100 appearances, whatever it is, that kind of sets that off. I was guilty myself a couple of weeks ago saying, listen, it's not that much money. Just don't think about that. Just if he's good enough to play him, worry about that later. But when you do for the card, I think it's an extra £7,000 or something. It works out, like you say, almost £500,000 a year. We're not in a position to be throwing that around, and a little bit extra for Janis Hagi, who hasn't contributed for 2.5 years. So similar to Cantwell in that we need to either ship him out or use him and get some value out of what we're paying. But it's so far from ideal. And again, this is another player like Cantwell who you just wouldn't expect to be in this position with. This is a guy you would expect to have suitors, expect to be desired and wanted, and not be sweating over the future of a day to go into the transfer window. We've not been great at buying players this window. We've not been particularly good at selling them either, Cammy.
No, we haven't. Again, I think Cantwell easy to deal with because it's been clear that he wants away, exactly as you said. Hadji somewhat different. I think he wants a move to materialise, and I've got zero doubt. I question when his agent is saying, we don't have clubs coming in for him. Well, that's kind of your job to be able to generate that interest. And obviously, he's lived in his dad's shadow his entire life, and no doubt he takes a lot from that. Georgie Hagi was bad-mouthing Rangers recently about obviously what's been happening with his son. I expect that from a dad. I totally get all that. But the main worry for me, Colin, is if he does come back in, I think it will be tough for him to be able to convince the Rangers fans of how committed he is at the moment, given everything else that's happened. But I do agree with you on the assumption that we can sort out this contractual wrinkle. Then, as far as I'm concerned, we are going to have to be able to see how he can feature. And he you know what, he should be able to, given how talented he is, that against the majority of our domestic opponents, he should be able to go and perform well. But again, there is obviously that question mark, as I mentioned before, around his injury record, how consistent he can be. There's all of those things that we have to take into account. In terms of incomings, we have got a couple of targets that are on the radar at the moment, Colin, and I'm keen to get your thoughts on these as well. The one that we are led to believe may be very close to completion is Nadim Bajrami. Most of you will remember from the Euros, he scored the fastest ever goals at the Euros for Albania against Italy. It looks like, and I think, everyone's now braced for this, that anyone that we do bring in will be a loan. We have to obviously understand whether it'll be a loan with an obligation or an option to buy. But it looks like he could be coming over from Cyriel. I'll be honest with you, I think that this is exactly what we need in terms of an attacking midfielder. We have said long and weary that we need to be able to try and replace James Tavernier's goals that he struggles to be able to reproduce across the other parts of the team. And I think to a certain extent we've stepped into some of that stuff. And I do want to talk about a certain player having excelled at that last weekend as we talk about the Celtic game in just a moment. But how are you feeling about this in terms of Bajrami coming across? If it's going to be someone that the manager identifies as potentially sitting within that 10 role, we know he's keen on it. He's tried to use Tom Lawrence in there with some degree of success. But I think that this one could be, if it is as close to completion as we're led to believe, I think this one could be very interesting to see as to how he fits within the team.
Yeah, the last player we signed who set a record at an international tournament was Oleg Salenko, I think, Cammy. So hopefully he does better than Oleg did. But yeah, we need somebody to come in and actually make this number 10 shirt their own, because the manager wants to play for number 10. I think that's pretty clear. He's persevered. He's tried different options there, and none of them really stuck. So yeah, getting somebody who can come in and make that position their own and do well there is a key. It's such an important position. I kind of wish it was someone we were bringing in who we were actually going to own and have for a couple of years, develop and then move on. But that's just not where we're at, sadly. And that's why we're having to use the loan market even for these kind of key positions. And it's not ideal, but I'm not massively sad about it either. If somebody can come in and loan and do a turn, especially in a situation like this where the guy's obviously valued at his club, they've been relegated, they're expecting to come back up again this season, but he's probably too good a talent to sit in Serie B in Italy. So take him out, bring him back in over here for a year, and then they get him back. Hopefully he goes back with some medals or something behind him from his time here. So yeah, that works for me. obviously, I think like most people listening, other than the goal at the Euros and the kind of the excitement that happened with that, I don't know much about him other than that. But he certainly fits the bill for a guy that's done well on the biggest stage. People that I know, like Judge James on the pod, that watches a lot more football than me, seems quite impressed by him. So yeah, good. If this one's as far along as it seems to be, then good. I'd be happy with it at most times in the window. At this point, I'm ecstatic with it. Let's bring him in and see what he can do, because, as you alluded to, some of the other options we've tried at number 10 just haven't cut the mustard, and I'd be concerned about us continuing with that sort of formation, with that sort of game plan, with the personnel we've got just now, because it's just not working. So yeah, hopefully that one does come to fruition, and I'm talking about it on the Patreon site tomorrow.
Yeah, and another player that we are looking to bring in, and I think that this is essential for a replacement, because we've obviously lost Ben Davis to Birmingham during the week, is a central defender. And at the moment just now, Rangers have been talking to Hoffenheim for Stanley Nsocki. It's, again, another interest one. It will be a loan. Again, of course, we know that. The interest one for me is the player of good pedigree, came through the PSG academy, and also knows Philippe Clement because he played with him at Bruges. We need to strengthen the centre halves. It's simply, an area where right now I think that we've got three players. Leon King, I don't think features within the manager's plans. I think that, we saw that against Ross County when we saw Dijon Sterling moving back down into central defence when Liam Balogun get taken off with a neck injury. We've obviously got Salah, who we signed over from AC Milan, has been playing for the B team. I don't think has been, absolutely pulling up the trees in terms of his performances thus far. But again, I give him a little bit of scope because, he is new and he is obviously acclimatised into Scotland. But Nsocki could be an interesting one. My hope is, Colin, that we are able to confirm him because of that previous relationship with the manager. The manager will know what he can get out of him. 25 years old, so fitting within the age range. Certainly the manager has been keen to be able to try and bring down the average age of the squad. How are you feeling about this one?
This is another one, a positive one for me. Mainly because I think the player does have something about him. He's got a good pedigree, like you said. He's got the relationship with the manager. So you've got to think he's got to come in and he's going to be able to kind of understand the manager's sort of goals and motives and be able to fit in that way as well. And we just really badly need a centre back for the reasons you mentioned. We're about to go into this Europa campaign, which is 8 games rather than 6 this time, which will be pretty much games every other midweek. So Leon Balogun, as good as he is, and I really rate Leon Balogun, can't be relied upon to play 2-3 matches in 8-9 days. Every week just can't do it. John Souttar has also had his injury issues in the past. He seems to be over them, but it's always just a concern in the background with him. And you've got Robin Proper, who's just new to the club. So I do think we need someone else in there. Leon King, like you said, is training up to be a central midfielder now rather than a centre half. But he's also been linked away this week to other clubs as well. So, yeah.
Which would be right for him, by the way. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that would be right for him. I don't think it's anyone's best interest, especially not Leon King's, to sit on the bench at Rangers when he's simply just not going to feature.
No, it's not doing him any good for his career. He's living a good life, I guess, playing for Rangers, and it's what he's always wanted to do. But from a professional point of view, it's not helping him in the slightest. So yeah, probably best to move him on a loan, at least even on loans, to get some actual game time, get my season playing proper football. But yeah, we need to bring someone else in and just have that sort of cover, because I don't want Dijon Sterling being the de facto, or just slot him in at centre back, because I think he's more important, Cammy, and can do better things for us in other places in the pitch, and I don't like seeing him there. He never puts a foot wrong, he does well, but that's not what I want to see, a guy that can do what he can do in midfield.
No, it's not. And, again, I won't go into the conversation that we've had previously about, where we play Sterling. If we were talking about moving him into right back, I'm not a fan of it. I'm less of a fan of having to move him into centre half, purely because we just simply don't have players that we can play in there. Your point about Liam Balogun is spot on, because I think that I love Big Balogun, and I do think he's very, very committed to Rangers, but there is always the question mark around how fit can he stay. And I suppose at times as well, when you see what to me looked a fairly innocuous challenge against Ross County, who's obviously come off with a bang when he's been challenging for the ball. Yeah, there's definitely some questions around that as well. But as I say, my hope is that by the time that everyone comes to listen to this, we'll have some confirmed news as to regards those players leaving and joining the club as well. Let's look forward to Sunday, Colin, the season's first Old Firm game at Parkhead. I'm starting to get a little bit of the old battle fever. It's starting to build up. It's probably, I'm using it at the moment as a distraction from, the lack of transfer activity. We know that it's going to be obviously a full with Celtic fans. There's no away fans at the ground because Celtic shat themselves and decided to make up all kinds of wonderful stories about why we couldn't have away fans in the Old Firm games, certainly for this one in the New Year game. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are in terms of getting into. We've obviously got to take it within its own special little world, which we know the Old Firm games can be. But how are you feeling about it at the moment?
I wouldn't say the battle fever's quite here yet. If you've got that coming through, please send some my way. But I think that's just kind of preoccupation with all this transfer stuff and worrying about that at the moment and not really looking too far ahead towards this game quite yet. But it is getting closer and closer. It's probably earlier in the season than I'd like it to be. We'd either sign players earlier or the players that we do sign is a bit more time here before we throw them into that cauldron of hate, which it will be on Sunday. But yeah, it's. I wouldn't say I'm worried about it because I don't respect them enough to be worried about them, Cammy. But I'm kind of level-headed when it comes to the Old Firm games, and that at the start of each season, I always just make an assumption, rightly or wrongly, that they will win the ones at Parkhead and we will win the ones at Ibrox. And if it changes, then things either went very well for us or very bad for us. Lately, it's kind of went bad for us, sadly. But that's always how I see them, kind of with my level, sensible, looking ahead on. But when it gets to Friday, Saturday night, I'll be reading at the bit and thinking, you know what, we can probably get to them defensively. They're not that good. And there's this and there's that. We can maybe exploit a little bit of luck, a bit of magic here, a bit of magic there. But I think realistically, it's going to be a tough ask for us on Sunday. Going there, they're a far more settled side than we are. In terms of that fixture, they will have all the confidence. We know we've got players with that fabled scar tissue, and we've got players that I probably guess we'll mention in a minute or two that we know have had nightmares there in the past that we're going to rely on once again. Maybe relying upon them too often or for too long now to go there and do something different. So if it doesn't go our way, which could easily happen, I guess my big hope is that it doesn't not go our way spectacularly. We need to come out of it at least respectfully and still with something to build on and not be on the end of a hiding, basically, because I think that would be a disaster for this squad. It would be a disaster for our manager, and it would be a disaster for our fans in terms of the morale and stuff. So realistically, it's going to be difficult. I'm not writing it off or anything, but I think it'll be difficult, and I hope it's not as difficult as I think it's going to be. But it's going to take a hell of a performance, and it's going to take a lot of guys standing up in that fixture and doing things that when it really matters and when the leagues are still there to be won, they haven't done for a while, Cammy. But like I said, when it gets closer to the game and that battle fever does start roaring and the ciders start going down, I'll be screaming and shouting and thinking we're ready to do it and we're going to take them. But sensible me at the moment is a little bit concerned.
I think that's all valid. I think that one of the players I mentioned earlier on that I wanted to talk about specifically in this is Rabbi Matondo. Matondo, I thought, had an excellent performance against Ross County. Certainly something that we've all been looking for in terms of his ability. But again, I will use the caveat that I know that everyone else has done that, it's against Ross County. And for me, that relationship that he's been building up with Jeffy on the left-hand side certainly looks like it's still in its early stages, but it certainly looks like as if it's certainly got something that can be pretty potent. The interesting thing for me, Colin, and this is where, for me, my approach to the game at the moment, and by the way, it's interesting you use the word, you're not afraid of them. I don't think I'm afraid of them as such, and I certainly don't respect them. But what I need to be able to see from us is a courage and a bravery, which I think at times we've just failed to show at key moments. Now, most important thing I think for me is that they seem to have had a habit since the league started this season that, they'll score early in games. And I think that when you're going to go into that kind of atmosphere and that midden, then the most important thing we can do is just be composed. We just want to be able to keep it there. So I'm not looking for Rabbi Matondo to start making screaming runs. I understand that we want to start strong, and I'm not saying that we just sit in defensively and, don't come out of our half. I don't mean it like that, because I do think about guys like James Tavernier against Dyson Maeda, and that gives me a lot of the fear, and deservedly so. But, you remember that game at Ibrox towards the tail end of last season, where that's what we were hoping to do. That went out the window within seconds. I think about the Scottish Cup final, where we did start to control elements of the game, and that, I think, for me is key. If the manager's going to learn anything from his exposure to these Old Firm games, it's always about being able to try and control certain periods of the game. They will want to start fast. They will want to start coming out on the front foot. They'll want to try and continue being able to try and get those early goals. But for me, Colin, what we need to be able to do is just allow players, certainly those who either haven't performed anywhere near their best in them, or for some of them that it's their first time playing in it, just that opportunity to just settle themselves into the game, take it easy for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then we can then start to impose. Losing an early goal, for me, I'm worried the house falls down.
Yeah, we need to stay tight. We need to stay tight throughout the game, but particularly in that opening third or so, because you're right. An early goal for them will collapse. We will struggle to come back from that, and it'll just give them all the momentum, and they'll push on from it. So I absolutely agree. We need to be tight. You mentioned Matondo. Matondo's a guy that's frustrated the hell out of me throughout his Rangers career, because there's clearly talent, there's clearly pace, there's clearly a guy that can dribble well, he can finish well as well. Just not consistent enough. He has looked decent so far this season. Looks great last weekend. The two things that I've kind of been impressed with just have been both wings, actually. Him and Yefty on that left-hand side, and Tav and Sherney starting to get a bit of a relationship together on the right-hand side. And I think the introduction of those guys alongside Tav has led to quite a lot of pace going down our wings, and that could be key, especially on the counter on Sunday, which is how you imagine a lot of our attacks will probably come by. So yeah, I would have him on the pitch on Sunday, and he's a guy I think you can almost. It's not so much you can rely on him because he's inconsistent, but he's a guy I'm not scared of playing against them, because he doesn't have fear. He's not short of confidence, and I don't think playing against him will worry him or concern him. He'll go out and just do what he does every other game, which is try and beat teams with pace, and often run out of space, sadly, against most teams in Scotland. But I think on Sunday, Matondo could be key actually for us in terms of the attacking areas and getting behind them. So yeah, for me, he'd be on the pitch, definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, for me, he starts. I think that there's no question around that. I think that there's an element of that where I'd like to see him being utilised as that out ball, but that also shifts a little bit the focus onto everyone's favourite Rangers player and topic of Cyriel Dessers. Cyriel Dessers, for me, Colin, I think could have a very interesting game at Parkhead. The most important thing for Cyriel Dessers to do is not get bullied. He can't allow guys like Cameron Carter-Vickers to be able to push him around and to move him out of space that he wants to manipulate, rather than having it the other way around. And I was really pleased. The first goal against Ross County, and similar when we were talking about the nature of his finishes at the moment, where it just seems, and I don't know if this is through deliberate coaching or not, but it just seems to, I just need to finish this. No matter the distance, I am lashing this home. And that's exactly what he needs to do, because we've all screamed about this idea of sometimes when he has time to think, it's actually an inhibitor against them, because he needs to be able to get better at his first time finishing. And he's certainly been doing that. That element of his game seems to have improved. He won't get as much of the ball. We know that. There has been questions around his hold-up play, which then you would hope, if can get better, can bring guys like Czerny and Matondo into the game a lot more. But we just need to be able to see a really and I mean a strong performance in terms of, using his physicality. I fully expect Rangers to get 0 decisions. I think, I've read a stat somewhere that, I think something in like the last 8 or 10 Old Firm games, we've had something like 5 goals disallowed against them or something like that as well. However, we just need to put all that to one side, because we just need to be able to go out and make sure that we just simply are not bullied off the ball. And there's been some times for me where I think that we've made bang average Celtic players look like world beaters because we've just been dominated a little bit too much. Cyriel Dessers can lead that line as far as I'm concerned, because I don't think that that's a great Celtic defence. But he needs to be able to go out and hopefully using the confidence that his goals already so far to the start of the season have given him, because he scored already some important goals for us, obviously within the League Cup when he came on for Danilo. He's scored some very good finishes, obviously the goal across in Poland. So he should be good into this, I'm hoping, with a good confidence lift. And definitely I'm looking towards him to be able to try and lead that line in a really productive and positive fashion.
Yeah, Cyriel Dessers has been impressive for me so far this season. He scored a bunch of goals, and his overall play has been a lot better. I've never been a Cyriel Dessers hater or anything like that, Cammy. He comes across a massively likeable guy. I think he tries a lot on the pitch. You can see how frustrated he gets on the pitch regularly when things don't go his way. So I think his heart's in it as well. For a long time, I've always thought the biggest issue Cyriel Dessers has had, it's not necessarily him, it's the over-reliance we've thrust upon him, because for so long we've not really had any other options up front with the Danilo injury and nobody else really contributing in that area. And he's not had the best of players alongside him creating chances for him either for a long time. But yeah, this season he started off well. He is our only option to start the game on Sunday. There's no debate to be had. It's far too early to be throwing Danilo into that. Danilo could contribute off the bench, but you start with Cyriel Dessers, and he's capable. He's scored against them before. He's goals disallowed against them before. He's not scared of them either. So I like Cyriel Dessers. There's been a lot of talk about him potentially leaving this transfer window. I think thankfully now that's died away, because we'd be off our nut to get rid of Cyriel Dessers at this point. He's far too important at this moment in this team to get rid of.
And to your point, Colin, and again, and I want to say this because I know we've talked a lot about him from a negative perspective, but I really, really like that about him, about the fact that, he had a solid offer in the table from Atlanta United.
Yeah.
Now, I can understand that some players may not want to move across to the MLS team or, whatever, if they see that list, but I have not seen a downturn in Cyriel Dessers' efforts and his work rate, etc. And I think that is something that we should actually all take a moment just to acknowledge and certainly respect.
Yeah, look, he's not had it easy here, Cammy. It's not been a successful first season for him, really. He's not been he's not taken to the fans' hearts en masse. So it's not like he's the picture boy or anything like that, or the golden boy at the team. Atlanta would be a lovely place to go and live, I would imagine. Making good money. That league's getting stronger and stronger. There's superstars playing in it now, and he doesn't want that. He's been quite happy to stay here, and he's not let it get him down. And like you say, he's played well. He's played better than ever. A big point is how frustrated he gets during the games. That shows the desire and the care and the want from me. And he just needs to get behind him. I think Cyriel Dessers with a competent partner or a competent competition up front is going to be a far different thing this season to somebody else that we saw last season, or something else we saw last season from when it was played into the ground and he was far too much relied upon him. He still did the business in terms of scoring goals. He just misses too much. But we create so many more chances than most football teams, so players do miss more chances playing for Rangers as well. But yeah, Cyriel Dessers hasn't really put a foot wrong for me this season, and he could quite easily be the hero on Sunday. I'd love it for him. I'd love it for us. I don't care who the hero is, to be fair, Cammy, but I'd love it to be Cyriel Dessers, and he's not going to get a lot of the ball. That's a big thing for me, that he's not going to have as many chances to probably fluff or to make a mess of as he maybe has in the past, so he needs to make them count when they come on Sunday. And the kind of form that he's in and the confidence I think he's got at the moment makes me believe that he could possibly do it. So get him the service and see what he can do on Sunday. And him, like Matondo, could be an unlikely hero for us that you probably wouldn't have heard many people talking about 3 months ago, 6 months ago, as guys should be thinking could be the heroes come Sunday.
Just you make sure and stick your usual tenner on him for first goal scorer, because it seems to have been doing well.
It's done well for me so far this season, yeah. It's definitely
right,
up.
I'll give you the tenner to put on it. Just make sure that you put that bet on. And just lastly, Colin, as well, another player that I do want to talk about, probably for me thus far, certainly a contender for player of the season, which is Connor Barron. I have said since Connor Barron came to Rangers that it's fine knowing about Scottish football and obviously experiences he's got playing for Aberdeen. His first Old Firm game, he's now adjusting to life as a Rangers player, and the difference that makes when he's been playing against his domestic opponents when he's wearing a Rangers shirt as opposed to an Aberdeen one. He has absolutely settled into the team brilliantly. I am really keen to see what he does in this Old Firm game. I have got faith that the occasion won't be too much for him. I think he's going to come into it. I think he's going to come in with that. Just probably that energy. He's like a wee dynamo in midfield. And I mentioned before that, there has been Celtic midfielders who I think have had too easy a time of it as well. I don't see Connor Barron giving them that kind of same level of respect. I'm hoping that he goes out there, he plays his game. And like I say, he's got the energy to make sure that where we need to close down, we will. Where we need to break, where we need to stop any attacks coming in, he'll be a big part of that, and then obviously looking to be able to move the ball forward when he can. Great partnership building between him and Diomande. But like I say, for me, I'm hoping that young lad is just sitting at the moment saying, I cannot wait till 12:30 on Sunday.
Yeah, you know what? I think he will be. I've been very, very impressed by him. We obviously do the post-match pods over on the Patreon network, and we choose a man of the match. And for so long, that award was jokingly referred to as the Steve Davis Man of the Match award because he was so consistent. He did it all the time. So far this season, it's been him. I really like the boy. I like the fact he's always looking to get the ball. When he gets the ball, he looks forward. He looks to get it. He moves it on, and then he moves himself. I can't remember what game it was either, but quite early in his Rangers career, he appeared out of nowhere and just flew into a guy and did a brilliant tackle and won the ball and broke up an attack. And I love that side of him as well. So, yeah, I think he's been a real plus out of our transfer dealing so far this summer. And he's came from nowhere, really. Aberdeen, not even playing all the time for Aberdeen, really, towards the end of his career there. And he's came in and just looked at home straight away. He looks as if he's born to play for Rangers, and looking for big things from him. And I don't think the situation will overawe him, or there'll be any of the kind of deer in the headlight stuff from him whatsoever. I think he'll be, like you say, right up for it and looking forward to it. And kind of what you said earlier about their midfield having it too easy and people not challenging them and not pushing them and letting them away with too much. That won't happen from this guy. The best comparison I can give him is like he plays in midfield kind of a bit like a super fit Ryan Jack used to play, and we saw the damage that a super fit Ryan Jack used to do to them in games. And it's even when he's not doing something, knowing that you've got a player sitting in midfield against you that's capable of getting in your face and will be alert to stuff, that certainly impacts the other team, and it stops them thinking they're going to have it all their own way. And that's the sort of little kind of inches they talk about in sport that can definitely help. So I'm all for Connor Barron in this game and looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Well, we've kind of covered it as best we can. Rangers, it's over to you now. Let's do some business off the park, and let's make sure that we do the business on the park come Sunday. If you want to hear more from us, and certainly all of the kind of pre-match build-up, and if you wanted to be listen to our special transfer show with our very own Jim White, Simon Halloran, as he's covering the slamming shut of the transfer window tomorrow evening, we'll have that for our Patreon subscribers. So if you are not one, why not go and become one at patreon.com/heart and hand. Please make sure that you join us. There's loads of great content already on there as well, from not just Rangers, but from the wider world of football. Some great shows on there as well. Colin does an excellent show on a Friday morning, which gets you set up for the weekend with him and Jack and Andy. Colin, thank you so much for coming on this week. It's been really, really appreciated. And again, tough because, like I say, we were hoping that we could have sat here and talked about the exciting news of those players that we brought in. I hope that we're still talking about that come Friday night.
Yes, it's going to be a busy Friday at Rangers by the looks of things. So bring it on. It's needed. It's wanted. And you know what these transfers are like. We live for this stuff. We live for the new players coming in. So get it done. solid day's prep on Saturday and then see what we can do on Sunday. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Cammy. I've enjoyed it as always, so cheers.
Thank you to our producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. And also, folks, just before we head off, thank you as well to our show sponsors, NordVPN. Please head on over to nordvpn.com/heart and hand, where you can get an exclusive discount as a Heart and Hand listener as well, if you ever want to upgrade your VPN network. And there's loads of benefits on there as well. I'll let you go on to check it out. That will be it from me this week. Thank you very much for listening. David will be back on Flagship as always on Monday. And as I say, make sure that you enjoy Sunday as best you possibly can. Rangers, make us believe. Bye now.